some of it to the outer edge. This does two things. It's compressing the clay firmly to the bat as I go up to this edge. Check to see how much clay I've got. That's good. Once I have the clay to the proper depth, I carefully make a level floor with the casserole. And I use my rib, smooth it off, and make sure that it really is level. You'll notice I tilt the edge of the casserole inward. Now that's important. It helps me control the shape as I'm pulling. The final shape will be outward. But doing this helps. And I put a finishing touch on the floor of the pot, the casserole. Now I'm ready to make my first pull. You'll notice I bring it up to the edge. I don't try to thin it all the way. In fact, it's deliberately thick here so that I can. So I use my hands like a mold. Finger, thumb, finger, finger. Bring it up. Now I start to bring a little bit of detail there on the edge. Trim the foot. And form a little round at the foot of the casserole. And then a rib. The function of a casserole is to put materials in and bring it out, and I've deliberately made the shape a V shape. And at this point I cut across the base using a wire, and I make sure that everything's still in round. And at this point I start adding the colors. This is a bead of porcelain. And I measure. Get a little excess in there. Here I measure the width, the diameter of the lid, and I start adding my colors. This is a rutile slip. It's all background. This is a porcelain. It supplies background and texture. Any drips I pick up with this sponge brush. And this is going to be blue, gray, and white. This is the blue. Glue on the rim. Glue in the design. For a little contrast, a very dark blue. And I go back and finish the design with two elements. Porcelain at the foot. Straighten everything out. Finally, I add a little more texture using this comb, which is simply a flat piece of metal, and I've filed teeth on it. It has a special curved edge too. At this point, I'm finished with the base, and I will begin the lid. What I like to do is use more than enough clay for the lid. Because what I'm going to do is throw a very low bowl, and I have to cantilever that low bowl. Thus, I need extra clay to support that. So I center the clay. Throwing a bowl is different than throwing a cylinder in that the first pull is done with one hand, the other supporting it, of course, but just pinching and forming a nice curve as I draw the clay outward to the edge. And again, leaving more clay here. And just repeat that using a different type of throwing. Sometimes I check and see how much further I have to pull it out. There it is. I use my rib to finalize the shape. And one little detail I like is the throwing mark, the spiral. Leave that in there.